Welcome everybody. Thank you for taking the time to joining me with this webinar. I'm Martijn van Bodegom, Product Manager at Avonic, and today I'll be taking you along with some of the recent feature updates that we've introduced in the latest firmwares. Some are already there and some will be released pretty soon. So before we get started, please notice that we are using Demio as a webinar platform, and on your right side you'll find the chat window. So if you have any questions during this webinar, please feel free to ask them right there. We'll be happy to answer them for you, and if you don't get an answer right away, please rest assured we'll be going over all these questions afterwards as well, so we'll summarize them in an email and make sure that you get your answers. So for those that don't know us yet, we're Avonic, a manufacturer of PTZ cameras. We are a Dutch-based company and we've been around for about 13 years now. We do our product design, manufacturing, warehouse and sales and support. From our background as an AV distributor, we've introduced Avonic as our camera brand, and this has soon taken over our complete interest, and that's basically all that we are doing right now. So currently we are being distributed in already over 30 countries as far as I know. So there should always be somebody selling these cameras somewhere near you. So let's get into the specifics of today's webinar. We'll be talking about some of the feature updates on the CM40 and CM70 series, and there's also one very important update on the REC200, our recorder streamer, where we introduced the FTP functionality. So I can talk a lot about this and show it on a PowerPoint, but why not take you along and show it real time? So let's log into one of our cameras running the latest firmware. Let's make sure caps lock isn't enabled. There we go. So I've got a camera right there to show you around. So this is the familiar page which you will see when you log into our camera. Now, it used to be running a flash player. Since probably end of this year, Chrome did no longer support a flash player plugin. So we had to change this around. And we've solved this by using just a more updated version of HTML5 to display the video instead of using a flash player. So minor update, but nevertheless an important one, because we want to be available with a preview to anybody running an up-to-date system. So HTML5 has been already released as in the most recent firmware update. So some of you might have already seen that. Now, more importantly, when you go to the system settings, after you've updated the camera, you'll find your PTZ Controls page here. And this page has been expanded with quite a few of the most important features for today. Now, the low and high speed PTZ was already there. This basically enabled the camera to go much faster than it used to go. This has been an update for about half a year ago, so this is an old feature but still very relevant. Now, speed by zoom has been introduced in the recent firmware as well, and this allows you to, when using the joystick controller, when you've zoomed in, the camera will move much slower than when you've completely zoomed out. So this will help you to keep control of your camera even when zoomed in completely. You don't want to go it all the way one left to right or up and down as fast as it can, but you want it to be slightly slower. So this will help you to control the camera in a more convenient way. Of course, on our CM40 controller, there is a little knob which you can set the preset or the PTZ speed. And this basically behaves the same, although this is more intelligent. It just looks at how far am I zoomed in currently, and it slows down the movements. So you'll have a nice way of controlling the camera. Of course, the PTZ knob on the CM40 will still work and works in conjunction with this setting as well. So a new one here is image freezing. So let's enable this, store our settings. So let's show it before. Okay, just to give you a comparison. So here I am, this is me doing my webinar. I've got a little tool here on my PC, so it makes it easier to call and reset presets. Let's call preset 1. So this is what it normally looks like when you call a preset. So there we go. You can see the camera performing all its different movements, and it works. It's not the best to look at, because to be honest, you don't want to show this to anybody looking at your live stream, aren't you? You want this to be done off-site or when the camera is not live. So if you are in the luxury position when you're using multiple cameras, this is not so much of an issue, because you can simply switch to another camera, then reposition the first camera, and then switch back to the second camera. Now, when you're doing just a single camera production, this can be really annoying because there's no real nice way to position your camera without the audience seeing it. So one of the settings that have been requested over the past couple months is the image freezing. So this means that the image will be frozen as long as the camera is moving from one preset to another. Once it is ready and in position and completely focused, then it will switch to the live feed again. So let me show you. Similar setup, just like I've done right now. Let's call my preset again. But now you see my image is frozen. The camera will do its movements, it will zoom in, it will focus in completely, and once it is finished, it will show you the live feed again. So this is just very convenient to eliminate those movements from your live feed when you're using a single camera setup. Now let's go back to the system settings again. Unfreeze, because I don't really need it. I've got multiple cameras here in my studio, so this was just for demonstrations purposes. The next one on the list is this low power mode, which you can find right there. So low power mode really means that the camera shuts down completely when you turn it off, by either sending a command to it or by sending an IR command to it. The camera will turn the way back and it will power off almost completely. The only thing that remains alive is the IR receiver and the serial connection. So using those two connections, you can power on the camera again without the need of using a button on the back of the camera or anything else. So the inconvenient part of this is that it is not possible to turn on the camera over IP, because it simply disables the IP functionality within the camera. The reason why this is done is that the camera needs to comply with the European power consumption standards. So when it is turned into standby mode, it's not allowed to use more power than a certain set amount. To comply with this, we had to eliminate the IP ports when powering down the camera, which is quite inconvenient. If you power down the camera over IP, you can't turn it on again. So to get rid of that issue, you can disable the low power mode, and this is a conscious decision. So if you use the camera mostly and it's otherwise turned on entirely for 24/7, you can simply disable the low power mode, and then you can power down the camera over IP, and it will also respond to the power on command. So it keeps everything alive. It will lose it will use less power still when it's turned off, because still there's no HDMI, there's no IP streaming, it turns off the sensor and part of the chipset. However, it keeps the IP port alive. So this feature, quite important when you're controlling the camera over IP completely and you want to be able to turn it off or turn it into standby. Use this low power mode, turn it off, and you'll be able to turn on the camera again over IP after you've turned it down. So it's a minor update, but it's quite a convenient one. Now, here in our studio, I've got all the cameras under my fingertips, so I can simply use the power switches on the back of the camera. So I'll leave the low power mode on because, yes, we're also quite conscious about the environment and are responsible to take care of that as well. Further down this list, now this is where things become really interesting. These are our preset speeds. So as you can see, we have preset pan speed, preset tilt speed, and preset zoom speed. So what you've just seen, let's go back, use the same setup. Now let's switch back to our home position. There we go. As you can see, this all happens pretty quick and pretty swift, which is okay. But if you want to use, again, a single camera setup, or you want to use multiple cameras and you want these movements to go, well, either much slower, or you want to have more control over how fast the camera is actually moving, or if you want to use the camera live when switching to one or another preset. This feature really comes in handy. So let's adjust some of these speed settings. So let's move this one down to 10, and this one as well. Half the speed for zoom, and well, you can turn it down even further. There we go. So let's see how this looks like. Let's recall my same preset. So before it was pretty quick going up to the, well, one of our studio lights as a close-in, close-up shot. Let's see what it does now. So this is much nicer to look at when it's live than what I've shown you before. And let's go back to our 0 preset, which is a completely different one, but you can see a little bit of my studio here. As you can see, this is part of our setup in our office. Now switching to this preset, it's much nicer to look at. So a very important feature this is. There aren't many cameras that are able to do this. So we've listened to the feedback that we've got from our customers, and this was one of the features that's been requested a lot of times. It took some time to implement, but we're happy to be able to release it now. So this feature can also be found in the most recent firmware published on our website. Let's move on to so basically this concludes the updates on the CM40 and CM70. So we've talked about the image freeze frame for presets, HTML5 preview, power off and on over IP in the low power mode, PTZ preset speeds, and next up is our complete HTTP API. Now this is not something I can show you in the web interface of the camera, so let's do that right here. So to give you an idea of how this looks like, I've got a command here which basically calls preset number 0, and this is the command you can send to the camera using a program called curl or curl on your Windows command line interface. Very simple, straightforward, it's all readable, you can actually see what you are sending to the camera. The complete API consists of about 40 pages full of settings for this camera. So basically every setting you can set in the camera will be able to be sent to the camera using this. So what I'm talking about is actually quite important. Let's switch to the camera quickly. So what you see here, for example, is our encoder settings, our streaming video settings. The encoder has been set up already, and you want to start streaming the camera to either YouTube or any educational platform you want to use. Then usually the first couple of things that you need to set up is enable the stream to start off with. You need to have the right protocol, RTMP or SRT in this case. You set up your host address, the server where you are sending your video to. Usually you have a stream name or stream key for YouTube, for example. This you need to enter here. Then you might need to log in using a username and password, save these settings, and you can then start streaming. Now, this is quite convenient if you have to set this up once and the camera will always stream to the same streaming host using the same key over and over again. This is fine, but as soon as you need to adjust this key several times a day or a week or maybe several times an hour even, this can become really annoying and cumbersome because you have to always log into the camera manually, change these settings, start streaming again, setting it up over and over. So with the HTTP API, you can set up every setting you can see here on the on-screen, on the web GUI of the camera and more. So you can actually enable the stream using this HTTP API. You can set the protocol type, you can set the host address, you can set the port, you can set the key, you can set username and password, and you can start the stream. So using this, you can basically program your entire venue using your calendar. Whenever you know, for example, in an educational environment where you're using a webcasting, an educational webcasting platform, usually you would want to stream per lecture to a different either host address, maybe that's the same, but at least the stream key changes for every lecture so that the lecture is logged correctly under the right information in your lecture capture system. So using this, you can basically eliminate the need for an external encoder, which is usually used, which they can program remotely to send it to the right key. Now you can do that directly within the camera. So you eliminate the need for an extra layer of hardware. Another point of failure is being eliminated, and it will save you on cost as well. Because simply the camera can do those things right now directly from the camera itself. So a very powerful tool. So alongside this streaming application, of course, there's also different use cases as well. So you can use it to manage large quantities of cameras, for example. So if you have a large venue, many cameras, and you want to adjust some of the parameters, but you want to adjust them for all 100 of them or 200 of them, then using an HTTP API, you can simply write a program real quick to adjust these settings for all of these cameras. So that makes it much easier to manage. Again, you can stop streaming, set the stream key. I've already touched upon that. You can create elaborate setting presets. So what do I mean with this? So for example, if you have a camera used in a single venue and it has a different use throughout the day compared to the evening. For example, you have a lecture hall throughout the day, it's used for lectures. And throughout the evening, there are some performances being done there because you've rented it out to a local theater group, for example. You name it. You probably know these use cases better than I do. But using these elaborate presets, you can send a single command to the camera, including all of the different settings. Like I said, we have 40 pages full of settings that you can change using this method. So you set up the camera for use throughout the day for your lecture. You set it in a different color temperature, maybe you change the preset speed, which I've just shown you in a couple minutes ago. So all these settings can be stored in a single command which you can send to the camera, and the camera will adjust all these settings and behave completely different in the morning compared to in the evening when you want it to be in a different color temperature because there's LED lights and you know what. So all of these settings can be sent to the camera just using a single command. Makes it very easy to set up these cameras remotely. One other fun feature might be useful in some cases is that you're capable of sending on-screen display messages. So for example, if you have a large venue, you're displaying your video feeds on local screens throughout the building, for example. There's been use cases like that. You can now use this HTTP API to post on-screen display messages. So the camera is capable of overlaying some text. It's a basic feature, but it's possible. And now using this API, you can combine this, for example, with your evacuation system. So whenever there's an alarm going off and you want everybody to evacuate the building, you can simply let the camera overlay text directing the guests to either get out the building or evacuate or anything of that. So you can use this to post messages over your video feed. And I guess this concludes basically our information about the CM70 series and the CM40 series feature update. So the one that is left is the REC200. So instead of showing this on a PowerPoint, let me quickly get my, there we go, REC200. Need to set it up quickly, switch to it, there we go. So what we have here are REC200 in our office. set up just to stream and record. It's not doing anything at the moment actually, but that's okay. So usually what you've been familiar with in these REC200 is this basic recording screens where you can set your recording device, whether it's USB or SD, your recording format, one prefix for your recording, and then either limit the record to loop size or time, or let it go indefinitely. So what we've added to this is that once you've finished recording, you might actually want to take this file elsewhere. So usually you would have to take out your USB or SD card, take it with you, bring it to another location or to your laptop, plug it in, download the file from the USB drive, and then upload it to the specific FTP server or any other system that you want to use. Now, this is fine if you have just a single recording every now and then, but again, within, for example, lecture systems, this could be quite annoying and cumbersome. You don't want to do this manually, you want this to be done automatically. So simply said is, this FTP option could be a solution in that case. So just fill out your information here, your FTP server, username and password. And for now, this is still a preliminary firmware, so this doesn't include all the features that we are going to include. But select the file you want to upload and click Start Uploading. This is nice again if you have just a single file, but what if you want to do this continuously throughout the day? Whenever a recording is finished, you want to upload this automatically. In the final firmware version, including the FTP server update, we will make sure that it includes two additional features. So one is automatic upload. Once you've finished your recording, it will automatically start uploading this file to the specified FTP server. And another one is auto delete. And this is actually quite convenient because the storage space is usually quite limited on SD cards or on USB drives. So once the recording is finished, it is automatically uploaded to the FTP server. And once the FTP server confirms receipt of this file, the REC200 will automatically delete it from its local storage. So this way you can keep going on and on and on indefinitely without having to change your storage device. So this will basically be the feature, how it will look like. I haven't implemented here yet in this firmware, but once it is ready for release, which we expect in about 1 or 2 weeks, we'll make sure that you get all these features included. So let's go back. There we go. So this concludes basically our webinar. If you have any questions about these features or any of our products, make sure to call us, give us an email, give us a shout, try to reach out on a chat window, which we'll leave open here for probably another minute or 10, so you can ask some additional questions if you want to, and we'll get back to you. So even if we might have not answered your questions today, we'll give you an email follow-up in the days to come. The video itself will be uploaded to YouTube as well, so you can look back. And there are more webinars coming up. So please make sure to go to avonic.eu/webinars and register for any of the following webinars. For now, I want to thank you for taking the time to join me on this webinar. I hope you've been informed and that you've learned something new about us today. So thank you so much for watching and have a good day.